So, I wanted to take a moment to speak to you all about where I've been, because it's been a while now since I've made a video for the Blackstone Fortress series or even one of these. And it's been a little while now since I've uploaded anything to Instagram as well, which of course is where Bearded Brushstrokes all began. Um, Only some of it really comes down to depression. Some of it is down to the editing software that I use not doing what it's supposed to do and shutting down every time I try and actually save my work. So I've been looking for different ways of doing that. Um, some of it is due to the fact that I've had personal commitments. I've had first ever funeral I've ever been to recently, um, which I think a normal neurotypical person might struggle with. Um, looking after or trying to help members of the family who are struggling with loss and grief. And then, yeah, absolutely, some of it is to do with my depression. Um, and I was struck, the reason I'm talking to you now is that I was struck by an idea of maybe an analogy that might help people understand. I mean, we talked before about the difference between sadness, regular garden sadness, which absolutely is valid, and I very definitely felt at times, and depression, and how we colloquialize the word depression and make it mean less, be less precise with our language, which again is fine. I'm not going to be one of these people who says you can't use the word depression if you're not actually clinically depressed. It has a meaning outside of the clinical diagnosis. That's fine. People understand what you mean when they say, oh God, I'm so depressed. The problem is that people don't necessarily understand what you mean when you then say, no, really, I'm medicated, I see a counsellor, things like that. Well, I was thinking about it, and I was thinking about how it feels and how, um, I mean, a recent example of what this makes me feel like is some of you who do follow me on Instagram might know that I recently wrote, I think, about 8 A4 sheets of paper, having designed a dungeon for 5th edition D&D, which I then went and ran, and I did it not on particularly short notice, but I'm a bit crap at deadlines, so I did it at the last minute. It took me 10 hours with a little bit of a break to write 16 pages of my rather scrappy handwriting, including designing puzzles and things like that. And it felt magnificent to have done that and get it done, to have something ready when I said that I would, and to have something that I was proud of as well. It was good quality work as far as I was concerned. It's also set in my own campaign world, although it's loose enough that we could use it anywhere. Um, and so it felt like I was contributing to the overall sort of completeness of that, of writing my campaign world. Um, I went to do something similar recently, and that was writing, okay, a slightly more ambitious adventure. Very similar, in terms of what I was writing. Again, a low level D&D adventure for 5th edition, set in my campaign world, but again, loose enough that it can be used anywhere. And the only real difference is the tone. First of all, that it's a horror adventure, So there needs to be a little bit more effort, I think, put in personally, I feel, into the description work, and um, you know, the sort of the atmosphere building and things like that. Um, and then the other thing is that it's split over 3 levels of a dungeon rather than just one. And you wouldn't think, or I didn't think, that that would cause too much bother. I hit a brick wall. I was typing it this time, and because the table where I'd normally work was being used by Mrs. Brushstrokes, and I got 2.5 pages in, if that, and I just couldn't bring myself to type anymore. It wasn't writer's block. I know what all the rooms in this dungeon look like. I know how they smell, what the air tastes like, what's in them. Um, what monsters I want to have in them and encounters and things. I just couldn't drag myself any further towards having that written, and that's painful, to be honest with you. And it feels like a weight, like a lump on the chest, that I'm trying to lift, and it gets heavier the more I try to lift it. And the analogy I wanted to talk to you about is to do with that. So imagine that you are setting out on a journey up a mountain. You've had everybody in your life so far, your parents, your teachers, guardians, friends, everybody preparing you for this adventure going up this mountain. You've got the best quality rucksack that you can get. You have the the everything's properly balanced. You have all the correct equipment, and you're ready to go. You're excited. You're off, as I say, on an adventure. Fantastic. Okay, what if every night when you make camp going up this mountain, somebody sneaks some rocks into your bag, and they don't tell you. They hide them under your other kit. So as you're going up this mountain and trying to make your way towards the summit and enjoy this adventure, your bag is imperceptibly getting heavier and heavier. What if the bag itself is not actually the best quality bag available, but the best quality bag you could deal with, you could get, um, if the person who made the bag wasn't paying attention, and didn't want to make the most quality bag, um, and it breaks or it digs in or it doesn't carry the weight properly. And if you lose items of equipment, so when you get to a chasm that you need to jump across, to climb across, you can't because you don't have the right equipment. It's just not there. And that's what, in a way, being depressed is like. You are not equipped anymore. Your threshold for being able to handle given situations is lower than it would otherwise have been, in, as I say, in a neurotypical. That is somebody who has a normally functioning brain, who doesn't suffer from a mental illness, doesn't have depression, etc. Um, so there are things that people with normal brains would they would suffer with, that would be punishing to them, like dealing with the death of a loved one, or preparing for a wedding, for um, with long, boring, tedious tasks, even like I've been sorting my magic cards this week, and it gets to a point where I just cannot focus on what I'm doing. So your threshold for almost for boredom is so much lower as well, because it's all based on your energy levels. And that's one of the things that we don't talk about with depression, that people don't understand, is that it saps your motivation. I can want to to lose weight and possibly even go for a run and things like that. I can want that as much as you like. I can't do it because I can't move. You know, it's difficult, and then mix in the heady cocktail as well of anxiety, and I do suffer from anxiety as well. Not so much that I'd call it an anxiety disorder, although any illness that actually causes a problem to you is a disorder. Um, that's the definition. So maybe it is a disorder in and of itself that I have anxiety, but that's by the by. So you have anxiety, which is your brain telling your body to get up, shift, move itself, and get something done. You need to move and solve problems. Sometimes the problems aren't even there. I've heard anxiety described as being like hearing the boss music in a game, but never actually meeting the boss. So you got all that tension and no relief, which is horrible. But then mix with that the fact that it would be so much better for you if you were to get up and have a run and at least burn some of this nervous energy off. But you can't, because your depression has made you so tired that you can't move. So what the hell are you supposed to do, you know? Um, and that's pretty much where I've been. I mean, cards on the table. My Mrs. Brushstrokes has lost a member of her family. Um, Other members of the family have had some illness issues that I'm not going to go into because they're not mine to share. Um, and I have this issue with a job that I was told that I've been offered, but there's things are getting in the way, and I'm not sure if it's going to be mine, or if I'm going to be essentially in up a certain creek without a certain paddle, from a financial point of view, very very soon. Despite having a job, or despite being offered a job and being successful at an interview for once. There's also the fact that for every one of those interviews that I've had that I've failed to get to the job offer stage, those have been some bricks put in my backpack, and it becomes harder and harder to carry on the more that I fail to live up to my potential, the more that I fail in things that I seek to do. Um, the more I try and fail, it just it seeps into your bones and into your core, and it just wears you down, and it just wears somebody with depression down faster than it normally would. Um, so the next time you come across somebody who is depressed or has any mental illness anyway, it's not just depression. Um, just realize that for them to hold themselves together as well as they are is a constant effort, that is draining in the extreme, and requires pretty much every ounce of that person's energy. And I'm not sure that anybody who listens to my stuff and reads my stuff, etc., would ever do this. But it really isn't a case of telling somebody, "Buck up, you'll be all right," etc., and they'll be all right. We're not talking about sadness. Um, my mum um, has told me at times that she doesn't try to think of her feelings and emotions in terms of metaphors and doesn't overanalyze. She thinks I overanalyze. And to be fair, I probably do, but I don't think that you get to a point where you can be self-aware enough to deal with a mental illness unless you do some analysis. So, I think of it as a coping mechanism, really, that I can open up the hood of my mind and have a look inside and see what's making me tick. Um, it's useful, I think, sometimes to take a step back and have a look at that. But yeah, she told me that she doesn't use those techniques, and you know, I mean this in all the sincerity I can muster. Bully for her, you know. She doesn't need to do that. Well, I spend an awful lot of my time trying to explain how I feel to friends and strangers, and as such, I need those sort of almost storytelling techniques to get my point across. So I have no problem sort of trying to analyze those things. I try not to belabor the point, so I don't end up going into too much detail or too much, sort of labeling everything in the metaphor with this represents this, this represents that. So if I ever do that, let me know. But it's it's difficult and it's relative, and so just in the same way that if you stub your toe and you've somehow managed to get through your life having never felt pain up until that point, that's going to be the worst pain you've ever suffered from. If you if you've survived a car accident where your limbs were some of your limbs were ripped from your body, you've lost appendages, you've been stabbed by bits of the car, etc., and you stub your toe and don't feel it. Well, that's fine too. That's not going to be the worst pain you've ever suffered from. But it doesn't make the first person's experience invalid. And it doesn't mean that they're any weaker than you. It just means that their experience is different. What I'm driving at is that we're all going up the mountain. We're all doing it relatively together, and we've all had people in our lives who have done some work towards preparing us for that journey, and whether that is good work that results in us being able to get up that mountain that much easier, or it's substandard work where you're not as equipped as you could be, or damage was done before you even left the house. Um, it, we're all on the same journey. We're all dealing with a different quality of preparation and a different quality of experience. So I think, as I often say, be kind to yourself, but be kind to each other as well, because it's an old adage, but you have no idea what's going on behind somebody else's eyes. Um, and if you can help someone, I think it behooves us to help someone and to look out for each other, because at the end of the day, we're all human and we're all in this together. Um, what does this mean? Well, after this video, there'll be a post on Instagram about the fact that this video exists. Because it's been a while since I've produced anything, I think I'd feel better if I released this immediately rather than gating it behind Patreon. Um, so sorry to my patrons. This is going straight out to sort of explain where we're at, and yeah, so there'll be a post about it, which will be the first one since I think at least Friday last week, which is when the funeral that we went to was. Um, and this will be the first video for quite some time if I can get it edited and up. So yeah, it's not really something to enjoy, but I hope that you get something from it. And I'm hoping to be back on track with making the videos and posts pretty soon. Yeah. So as I say, be kind to yourself, be kind to each other, and we'll speak again soon.